high above the valleys, where clouds drift like restless spirits and rivers carve ancient scars into stone, lie the homelands of the mountain tribes. These are worlds suspended between earth and sky, where survival is written in the rhythm of wind, snow, and silence. For centuries, their people have walked ridges where only eagles soar, building lives from rock and fire, tradition and endurance. Each peak holds a story, each path a memory older than empires. This is not just wilderness. It is heritage carved into cliffs, resilience woven into mist, and humanity living at the very roof of the world. High in the thin air of the Himalayas, where the earth rises into towers of ice and stone, the Sherpa people have built their world. Villages cling to ridges where prayer flags whip in the wind, and herds of yak move slowly across the cold grasslands. Here, survival has always meant harmony, with a landscape that tests the human spirit with every breath. The Sherpa are not newcomers to these heights. Their ancestors crossed from Tibet centuries ago, carving out a life at altitudes where crops grow reluctantly and storms gather without warning. The mountains became both shield and challenge, a sanctuary from invasion and a crucible of endurance. With the yak, their steadfast companion, they carried salt, grain, and stories across the passes. These animals gave milk, wool, and strength, binding people and beast into a rhythm older than kingdoms. Yet the Himalayas demanded more than labor. They demanded faith. Monasteries rose against the snow, their chants echoing through valleys, reminding all who lived there that the peaks were not just stone, but living deities that watched over the people below. When the modern age turned its gaze to Everest, the Sherpa became known far beyond their valleys. Foreign climbers arrived chasing the summit, but it was the Sherpa who guided them, who carried their burdens, and who opened the path to the roof of the world. They built ladders over crevasses, set ropes along cliffs of ice, and walked into storms where air itself seemed to vanish. In doing so, they revealed not only their skill, but the quiet resilience that had always defined them. Yet their true strength lies not in fame, but in their enduring bond with the mountains. The Sherpa remain guardians of these sacred ranges, keepers of a balance between survival and reverence. In their chants, in the slow tread of their yak, and in the steady heartbeat that echoes through stone and snow, the Himalayas continue to live through them. For in this place where the sky touches the earth, the Sherpa endure as both children of the peaks and protectors of their eternal silence. Along the ridges of central Nepal, where terraced fields climb the hillsides like green stairways to the sky, live the Tamang people. Their villages rest between forests of pine and rhododendron, where the wind carries the sound of bells from Buddhist shrines and the scent of earth freshly turned by hand. For centuries, the Tamang have lived as highland farmers, coaxing life from soil that clings to steep slopes, planting maize, millet, and potatoes in rhythms guided by the seasons and the sun. Here, survival has always meant patience, resilience, and deep respect for the land. The Tamang are believed to have settled these high valleys long ago, their roots tied to the ancient migrations from Tibet. They carried with them language, faith, and traditions that still echo in the chants of monks and the spinning of prayer wheels that turn endlessly in the mountain wind. Their Buddhist heritage shaped not only their rituals but their way of life, binding community, nature, and spirit into one. Monasteries built of stone and timber stand watch above their fields, reminders of a faith that has endured through centuries of change. Life, however, has never been without hardship. The steep terrain limits harvests, and winters test endurance with cold that seeps into wood and bone. For generations, the Tamang carried heavy loads along mountain trails, trading goods with distant valleys, their footsteps wearing paths into rock. Isolation from political power left their villages vulnerable, but it also preserved their identity, keeping alive the music of their drums, the colors of their dances, and the stories told beneath starlit skies. Even as the world beyond their hills pressed closer, the Tamang continued to weave strength into simplicity. Their homes of stone and wood shelter families, bound by kinship and song, their festivals celebrate cycles of planting and harvest, and their prayers rise like smoke into the mountain air. What endures is not only their labor on the land, but their harmony with it, a balance of devotion and survival. Among the rolling highlands of Nepal, the Tamang remain a people shaped by soil, faith, and the quiet power of mountains that have watched over them since the beginning. Across the misty ridges of central Nepal, where villages seem to cling to the mountainside, live the Gurung people. Their stone houses rise above terraces carved into the slopes, surrounded by forests that hum with the sound of bees. Here, life is bound to the rhythms of altitude and tradition, where survival depends on farming, herding, and a bond with the land that stretches back for centuries. The Gurung are known not only as farmers and herders, but as keepers of a remarkable practice, hunting honey from cliffs that tower above the valleys. The Gurung trace their origins to ancient migrations across the Himalayas, settling in villages that look down on rivers, cutting deep gorges through the hills. Their fields of millet, maize, and barley stand beside herds of sheep and goats, while monasteries and shrines remind all that the spirit world lives within the mountains themselves. For generations, they carried goods across high passes, serving as traders and later as renowned soldiers, yet their deepest identity remained rooted in the soil of their ancestral villages. Among their traditions, none is more striking than the great honey hunt. Twice each year, men climb bamboo ladders lashed against sheer cliffs, where giant bees build hives glistening with golden combs. Smoke rises from below to drive the swarms away, while hunters balance above the abyss, cutting wax and honey free with long poles. It is a ritual of danger and reverence, where each drop of honey is both food and offering, a link between human courage and the gifts of the wild. The cliffs echo with voices, the air thick with bees, as an ancient bond is renewed again and again. Yet the strength of the Gurung lies not only in these daring hunts, but in their endurance as a people of the mountains. Their dances, their festivals, and their songs tell of ancestors who endured cold winters and long journeys, who built a life in the shadow of peaks that rise into the clouds. To walk through a Gurung village is to witness resilience carved into stone, woven into fields, and sung in voices that carry across valleys. Among the cliffs, the Gurung endure as mountain farmers, as guardians of tradition, and as seekers of honey where the earth meets the sky. Beyond the high passes, where the Himalayas fold into silence, the land of Dolpo lies hidden between rock and sky. Here, valleys stretch barren and wide, touched by the shadows of peaks that rise like frozen fortresses. Villages of stone crouch against the wind, their walls darkened by centuries of storms. To reach this world is to step into isolation, where trails are measured not in hours, but in days, and where survival rests on the strength of trade, belief, and endurance. For the people of Dolpo, life has always been a dialogue between scarcity and resilience. Their ancestors settled in these remote valleys long ago, carrying with them the faith and language of Tibet. The land offered little. Fields of barley struggle against the thin soil, and winters press hard upon homes already worn by time. Yet what the earth denied, the mountain trails provided. The Dolpo became traders, moving salt, grain, wool, and medicinal herbs across dizzying passes, their caravans of yaks and sheep weaving lifelines between isolated valleys. These journeys were more than commerce. They were survival, binding distant worlds together through footsteps carved in snow. The hardship of Dolpo shaped a spiritual devotion as enduring as its peaks. Monasteries rise against the cliffs, their walls painted with images of guardians and deities, their halls echoing with chants that mingle with the wind. Every prayer flag that flutters across the ridges is a reminder that the landscape is alive, that mountains themselves are protectors and witnesses to human struggle. Faith is not separate from survival here. It is the thread that ties community to endurance, spirit to stone. Though remote, Dolpo's people have never been forgotten by the mountains they inhabit. Their lives remain measured in the rhythm of trade, the cycle of migration, the steady beat of footsteps across the highest trails on earth. Their stories are carved into cliffs, whispered by rivers, and guarded by the silence of the snow. In Dolpo, life continues at the edge of the possible, a fragile yet unbroken chain of resilience, where human endurance and Himalayan vastness remain bound together in timeless communion. High in the folds of the eastern Himalayas, where clouds sweep across deep valleys and ridges crowned with snow, live the Bhutia people of Sikkim. Their villages rest among forests of pine and oak, with monasteries rising like guardians above the land. Descended from Tibetan ancestors who crossed the passes centuries ago, the Bhutia carried with them not only language and custom, but a way of life bound to mountains, faith, and survival. Here, amid the shifting mists, they became mountain dwellers, whose heritage remains carved into every stone and prayer flag. The Bhutia established themselves in Sikkim during ancient migrations, weaving their culture into the very fabric of the land. They built homes of stone and wood that stood firm against storms, and they turned steep hillsides into fields of barley, buckwheat, and maize. Yaks and cattle grazed on high meadows, while traders journeyed along trails that wound through the passes, carrying salt, wool, and grain between valleys. Their lives were a balance of movement and settlement, resilience and faith, shaped by the harsh yet sacred environment around them. At the heart of Bhutia identity lies their Buddhist tradition, a legacy that saturates every aspect of life. Monasteries adorned with murals and golden roofs guard their villages, and the chants of monks flow through the air like the sound of distant rivers. Rituals honor deities of mountain and sky, while prayer wheels turn endlessly, binding human effort to cosmic rhythm. This faith is not only worship but survival, for it teaches endurance, harmony, and reverence for the towering peaks that both protect and challenge them. Over centuries, the Bhutia endured the tests of isolation, harsh winters, and the shifting powers of kingdoms that rose and fell around them. Yet through every trial, they preserved their language, their songs, and the quiet dignity of their mountain world. Today, the Bhutia remain as children of the high ranges, inheritors of a Tibetan past, yet deeply rooted in the valleys of Sikkim. Their story is one of endurance and faith, a life lived in harmony with peaks that rise beyond the clouds, eternal guardians of a people shaped by the mountain's breath. In the emerald valleys of Sikkim, where rivers leap from glaciers and forests crown the ridges, live the Lepcha people. Their homes stand among bamboo groves and moss-draped oaks in a land they call the gift of their ancestors. Known as the original inhabitants of these mountains, the Lepcha see themselves as children of the snow and streams, born from the sacred peaks that watch over their valleys. Every river is a spirit, every forest a guardian, every stone a memory of the past. To walk their homeland is to enter a world where nature and people breathe as one. The Lepcha shaped their life from the land itself. With patient hands, they cultivated millet, cardamom, and paddy on slopes where rain falls heavy and soil runs deep. They wove robes from cotton and nettle fibers, clothing dyed in colors that echoed the forests around them. From bamboo, they crafted tools, baskets, and bridges, binding their survival to the strength of the living landscape. Their world was never one of conquest, but of harmony, where hunting, gathering, and farming formed a circle of balance with the wilderness they revered. Stories tell of their deep faith, rooted in spirits of mountain and river, later intertwined with Buddhism that swept across the Himalayas. Sacred rituals are performed beneath towering trees, with offerings of rice and flowers carried by streams to the unseen guardians. In monasteries that rise against the green hills, chants mingle with bird calls and the rustle of leaves carrying prayers into the sky. For the Lepcha, spirituality is not separate from survival. It is woven into every harvest, every forest path, every song that honors their ancestors. Through centuries of change, the Lepcha endured. Larger kingdoms surrounded their valleys, yet they preserved their language, their crafts, and their harmony with the earth. Their robes, their music, and their rituals remain threads of identity, binding the present to an ancient past. In the forests of Sikkim, the Lepcha continue as guardians of a living heritage, a people who have never forgotten that their truest wealth lies not in stone or empire, but in the eternal breath of rivers, forests, and mountains. High in the cloud-veiled mountains of the Philippines, where ridges fold into mist and valleys echo with rushing streams, live the Ifugao people. Their homeland is a land of stone and rain, where centuries ago they carved mountains into stairways of earth. The rice terraces of Ifugao, rising tier upon tier against the slopes, are not just fields, but monuments, living testaments to the union of human will and the vastness of nature. Each wall of stone, each channel of water, carries the memory of ancestors who turned steep wilderness into a landscape of order and abundance. The Ifugao trace their origins deep into time, long before foreign powers reached their shores. Their lives became inseparable from the terraces, for rice was not merely food, but the axis of their world. Planting and harvest were guided by rituals, chants, and offerings to the spirits of earth and sky. Every step of cultivation, tilling, sowing, reaping, was accompanied by prayers, for the rice was believed to hold the soul of life itself. The mountains were not obstacles to be conquered, but partners in survival, their slopes patiently shaped by hands that labored with reverence. Yet the terraces demanded more than faith. They demanded endurance, for their maintenance required endless care. Stones had to be reset after rains, channels cleared of debris, and fields guarded against the creeping wild. Year after year, generation after generation, the Ifugao rebuilt what storms tore down, renewing their covenant with the land. To falter was to risk hunger. To endure was to affirm identity. Through this labor, the terraces became more than farms. They became the heartbeat of a people, a heritage passed from ancestor to descendant without break. Even today, the terraces rise like green cathedrals into the mist, vast and silent witnesses to centuries of toil. The Ifugao remain bound to their highland homeland, keepers of knowledge that has endured the passing of empires. In the quiet of dawn, when fog drapes the fields and water shimmers along the steppes, the terraces whisper their story, a story of endurance, of reverence, and of a people who shaped the very bones of the mountains into a legacy eternal as the clouds. In the high mountains of Vietnam and Laos, where mist curls through valleys and ridges glow green after rain, live the Hmong people. Their villages rise among terraced fields and winding trails, where wood and stone houses stand against the shifting clouds. To enter this world is to step into a land where mountains are both protector and trial, shaping a people whose endurance is etched into every harvest, every stitch of cloth, every song carried by the wind. For the Hmong, the highlands are not wilderness, but home, a place of memory and spirit. Centuries ago, the Hmong journeyed southward from distant homelands, crossing rivers and peaks until they found refuge in the misted highlands. Isolation gave them freedom, yet it also demanded resilience. On steep hillsides, they planted maize, rice, and vegetables, terracing slopes with patient labor. Their days followed the rhythm of the earth, guided by the cycle of planting and harvest, marked by festivals that honored both ancestors and the turning of seasons. Amid this labor, they preserved a cultural wealth as vivid as the mountains themselves. The robes of the Hmong, embroidered in intricate patterns, speak of this heritage. With threads of indigo, crimson, and white, they weave stories of lineage, spirit, and identity. Each garment is more than clothing. It is a map of memory, a living symbol of belonging carried on the body. Music rises beside it, from bamboo flutes and voices that echo across valleys, binding past and present in melody. Through artistry and ritual, the Hmong transformed hardship into beauty, weaving strength into every fold of their traditions. Yet life in these mountains has always tested them. Harsh winters, scarcity of fertile soil, and long isolation from centers of power shaped a culture of independence and endurance. Still, the Hmong held fast to their ways, guided by ancestral spirits and the wisdom of elders. Their villages remain cradled in the clouds, their embroidered robes glowing like fire against the mist. Among the highlands of Vietnam and Laos, the Hmong endure as mountain farmers, as guardians of tradition, and as storytellers whose legacy lives in fabric, in song, and in the breath of the mountains themselves. Across the deep gorges of Yunnan and the northern ranges of Myanmar, where rivers roar beneath cliffs and mist clings to forests, live the Lisu people. Their villages perch on steep ridges, bound to landscapes where the earth splits open into valleys too wide to cross by foot alone. For centuries, the Lisu have been mountain dwellers, farmers, and hunters, yet they are most remembered for their daring bridges of rope, paths spun across chasms where only the wind dares to linger. These woven lifelines carry not just people, but the very survival of their communities. The Lisu trace their roots to ancient migrations, moving southward from the high plateaus of Tibet. In their search for refuge, they settled among mountains of great difficulty, where every journey was a struggle against cliffs and torrents. To endure, they planted maize, millet, and beans upon slopes carved by hand and hunted within forests where silence was broken only by bird call. Yet their greatest challenge was crossing the rivers that cut their world into fragments. From this challenge, they created bridges of twisted bamboo, cane, and rattan, suspended above the abyss like threads of courage. Building such bridges was an act of skill and faith. Men carried coils of fiber down to the cliffs, anchoring them to trees and stone before stretching them across waters that thundered below. Step by step, villagers crossed upon narrow strands, balancing against the rush of wind, trusting in the strength of what their hands had woven. For generations, these bridges bound scattered valleys together, carrying not only trade and travel, but also kinship, story, and ritual. They were arteries of survival, joining lives across divides that mountains had torn apart. Even beyond their bridges, the Lisu culture endures in music, dance, and vibrant dress, woven with bright threads of red, yellow, and blue. Their festivals celebrate both harvest and spirit, honoring ancestors who once walked those perilous ropes. Though the modern world offers new paths, the memory of those woven bridges remains at the heart of their identity, a symbol of resilience in a land where survival is suspended above the void. Among the gorges of China and Myanmar, the Lisu continue as mountain farmers and bridge makers, guardians of a legacy tied by courage to the very bones of the earth. On the steep hillsides of Sichuan and Yunnan, where terraced fields climb toward the clouds and forests sweep across the ridges, live the Yi people. Their villages scatter across the slopes, houses of wood and stone, overlooking valleys where rivers twist like silver threads. In this world of mountains, the Yi carved out a life of endurance, shaping the land with their labor and marking time with festivals, songs, and the vibrant colors of their dress. Every garment, every ritual, every story speaks of a people who have carried their heritage across centuries of challenge and change. The Yi trace their ancestry to some of the oldest highland settlers of southwest China. For generations, they built their homes on hillsides where the soil was thin but fertile enough for maize, buckwheat, and potatoes. Cattle and goats grazed on meadows above the villages, while forests provided firewood, herbs, and game. Life was never simple. Terrain made travel slow, and isolation demanded self-reliance, but hardship gave rise to resilience, binding families and clans together in a network of kinship that has endured through time. Their culture lives brightly in their clothing. Women wear garments woven in radiant reds, blues, and yellows, embroidered with patterns that echo the mountains and rivers around them. Headdresses shine with silver ornaments, while men cloak themselves in dark woolen capes that shield them from the mountain winds. In festivals, drums and flutes call the people together, their dances swirling like fire against the night, a living celebration of identity that transforms villages into seas of sound and color. The Yi are also storytellers, their history preserved not in stone, but in song and memory. Myths of ancestors, tales of migration, and chants of heroes have passed from one generation to the next, giving voice to centuries of endurance. Through conquest and change, through hardship and renewal, the Yi have remained steadfast upon their hillsides, their lives entwined with the soil and the sky. Today, their bright clothing and resilient spirit still shine across the highlands, a reminder that culture, like a flame, can burn unbroken, even in the wind of mountains.